Hello, and welcome to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining. This episode, we have Jonathan Glassner, co-creator of Stargate SG-1 and executive producer of SG-1, as well as co-creator of SYFY's brand new television series, The Ark, along with Dean Devlin of Stargate feature film fame. We have him joining us in this episode to share details on the Ark, which is going to take up the first half of the show. And in the second half, we're going to go into way back Stargate history, seasons 1 and 2. But before we get into that, if you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, do me a favor, click that like button. It does make a difference with YouTube and will definitely help the show continue to grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. A lot of these shows are live, so that does happen. It recently happened, actually, last week. And clips from this live stream will be released. Actually, clips from this episode, it's not a live stream, will be released over the next few days on Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net's YouTube channels. Again, this is not a live episode. This was pre-recorded this past week, just before the Ark aired. The first episode, the pilot, has now aired, so we're going to have Jonathan on to discuss that. As this is a pre-recorded show, the moderators will not be taking questions for Jonathan. Hopefully, we will have him back later on this season, maybe season 3, possibly season 4, to wrap up his SG-1 story. But we really get into the middle of his SG-1 story with this episode and talk a lot about the Ark. I'm really excited about this discussion, was thrilled to have him. Let's stop babbling. Let's bring in Jonathan. I'm back with executive producer and co-showrunner of the Ark, Jonathan Glassner. He also co-created this little show called Stargate SG-1 back in the day. Welcome back, sir. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too, David.
This is a wild time for you. You've got a brand new show launching. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What are you most excited about? It's airing next week on our time.
I'm excited to see what the audience thinks of it. You know, I never know. I do some shows that I am not real proud of that turn out to be huge hits, and then I do shows that I think are fantastic and they don't take off, so I never know. I happen to think this show is great. I'm loving every second of it, and very proud of it. So hoping the audience thinks so too.
Absolutely. I want to know right off the bat, because I was a huge fan of 1899, and then they killed it. And a lot of us were watching these shows drop like flies. How long is your game plan for this series? What is your intent? Do you have a specific number of seasons of an arc? Are you kind of playing it as you go? Where are you at?
We have thought ahead, probably one more season, just because I learned long ago that if you think too far ahead, unless you're doing a show like Lost that has one giant secret, I learned that if you think ahead, it ends up going in the trash anyway, because actors give you something that you hadn't thought of, things work that you thought would work, and things don't work that you also thought would work, and you end up going down different paths, and then it's like trying to get back on track is crazy. So we thought this season beginning to end before we even started writing it, and we have a pretty good idea of next season, and God willing, there's another season after that. I'm sure we'll probably have an idea of what it is halfway through next season.
Have there been surprises along the way that production, that cast have shown are possible, and your story is going to be adjusting to correspond with that?
Not really. It's weird. The show has gone kind of exactly as planned. The only thing I will say is things, nuanced things. There have been things that, these actors are amazing. We got so lucky with our casting. And we'll be watching dailies, and they'll do something. There'll be some little look to the other person, some nuance that Dean and I will say, well, what was that? That kind of makes me feel like this is going to happen. Maybe we should go down that path. But those are more for their personal stories, their individual stories. The overarching story, we pretty much stuck to.
Okay, good. How's how has the set worked out for you as in shooting in Serbia? I mean, I read a New York Post article with Dean. He was like, the production value that we're getting out of Serbia is just stellar.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I mean, we did the Outpost together there for 4 years or 3 years of the 4 years. And we basically just, when Outpost got canceled, we just said, let's keep that crew and keep that those sound stages and move over to this show because they were great. So that's what we did. It doesn't really matter where we shoot this show because it's completely inside the ship.
That's certainly true.
Yeah.
Or exteriors, which are also the same thing, kind of.
Right. Well, we were originally in Serbia because of money, but also because they actually have medieval castles and things like that for the Outpost. Mm-hmm. But we don't need this on this show.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, if you have a well-oiled machine, why fix something that isn't broken?
Yeah.
And you have the willing talent to pull it off. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Who have been your surprise rising star performers out of this crew that you think that the audience is really going to attach themselves to, or you personally are attached to?
I can't pick between my babies. It's I will say that every show I've ever done pretty much, you go through the casting and the actors nail the audition, and you feel like fingers crossed they can actually do this. But you never know if they've been practicing with a teacher for weeks to get that one performance right, and then they show up on the set and they're not very good, which has happened to me before. And in this case, it was an international cast, so we never met any of them in person before we started shooting. It was all done over Zoom. As soon as we started seeing dailies, we were like, nailed it. Every one of them has just been great. So I'll tell you, we don't have any weak links. That's for sure. They're just great.
They're delivering. Yeah. So are you still in production, or are you through the 12?
No, we're finished. We're still doing some visual effects work, but other than that.
Okay. Wow. And so you're just waiting for an order for season 2 then, basically, is what this comes down to. So,
yeah.
All right. I got to tell you, I've watched the first episode. We're not going to get into spoilers yet. This is spoiler free so far. But Stacey Reed, she's great to watch, and she's spunky. You know?
Yeah, she's great. And you know what? I found out later, we didn't know this when we cast her, but she's actually sort of a geek herself. She reads science. So she actually apparently was walking around the set talking to the other casting, this is true. This is how. So it's very much her in a way. I mean, she's a lot hipper than the character, but.
Well, isn't that great when you could bring something kind of real in the present into your product?
Yeah.
So, and I think she may be distantly related to me. READ. My British ancestor is a Reed. Her dad is British too. So,
wow, wouldn't that be weird?
I know. And Ryan Adams, he's kind of like perhaps kind of like a counterpart to her. I enjoyed really watching these two. So Stacey was playing Alicia Nevins, and Ryan is the 4-H kid, they called him, Angus Medford. He was cool to watch too. But I loved how you have the characters, and like if you're in high school, you can see which tables all these people would sit at. But that's really fun.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. Well, you see where the show can potentially go from the first episode. We have to kind of in our minds, okay, this person goes in this box, this person kind of goes in this box. But as we watch, it's gonna be like, okay, who's going to be stepping out of their box and giving us, something that we don't expect based on this personality trope that we see in front of us and where they've been placed on the ship in the hierarchy?
Yeah, well, I will say that out of necessity, because of the structure of the story of the pilot, it starts with the disaster instead of, the sort of this traditional way that a lot of these shows are done. Pretty much every show I've ever done also. You first get to meet the characters, kind of get to know them before the shit hits the fan. In this case, the shit hits the fan, and then you get to meet the characters. And out of necessity, they have to be somewhat they have to sort of be prototypes at first, because you're not going to have time to stop and say, well, this is what happened in my past, and they've got to fix the oxygen, or they're going to die. So as you watch the series, their characters blossom into full-blown, really interesting characters, and most of them are not what you expect. Some of them are, but most of them are not.
I love, personally, slower sci-fi. And one of the great things about SG-1 was you got both. Is every episode going to be a frenzy? We have to fix this next thing or we're going to die? Or is there room for slow character development, two people in a room talking, figuring things out together?
I tend to write, and so does Dean, in the style that Stargate was written in.
Okay.
It's, it's both. The shit will always be hitting the fan inside. But we really delve into these characters and get to know them well, and relationships bloom and fall apart, and it's a character drama first and foremost.
What has the feedback been like for the show in the press tour that you've done so far? Are people really excited about it?
So far, it's been amazing. The science fiction press in particular seems to really love it. They got most of the press got the first 4 episodes, and I think every single one of them said they can't wait to see the 5th episode. They're all hooked. So when you watch the show, stick with it.
What kind of time frame does the first season cover? Are we talking a few weeks? Are we talking the full?
TV time is strange. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't follow a natural time. So we don't really know how long it all is. We know where I get to, which I'm not going to tell you.
We don't get to a planet? What? It's a space station.
Or when we get to the planet, I should say.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say it's a period of months, almost maybe a year total.
One of the things that was, as a kind of a science geek myself, was trying to figure out when I was watching the shows, like, how fast is the ship going? Are they going faster than light? Are we dealing with relativistic travel? We don't appear to be going that fast. And if we're going as fast as the ship appears to be going, we wouldn't have reached the Kuiper belt in 5 years, leaving the solar system. And then in the preview at the end, we see the ship actually moving, which suggests that it has been traveling at a faster than light speed for most of that time, or it jumps. And you guys figured out how that works.
One of the things we're trying to do, because the show is not set thousands of years in the future, it's set 100 years or so in the future. So we're trying to base off of actual technology today. And you'll notice, for example, the computer consoles look like today's computers.
Mm-hmm.
The propulsion method on the ship is based on, well, you're a science geek, so I'll tell you, nuclear electrical propulsion, NEP, which is a real theory that NASA is actually about to launch a test vehicle to do, I think, in 2 years. Oh. First of all, let me take a step back. When you're writing science fiction, there's science and there's fiction. Mm-hmm. And in order to have an interesting storyline, you can't stick completely to the science in a show that's exciting like this one. I mean, you can if it's a show about the science, you know what I mean? But if it's a show about people and travel and all that, you gotta cheat a little bit. The best example in the pilot is, the anti-gravity thing. That doesn't exist and probably never will exist without a giant rotating thing. Mm-hmm. But we'd still be shooting the first 15 minutes of the show now if we did the whole show in zero gravity. So, you have to take your hits. So in the case of NEPS right now, they think will go, I think they said it'll go about 40% of the speed of light. We're saying that it will go just under the speed of light. So it goes up to like 99% of the speed of light. So before we were hit, that's how fast we were going.
And then the ship returned to normal space.
Once we took the hit, we're in normal space the whole time because we're not going faster than the speed of light. So there's no...
I see.
But once we took the hit, we're on what Star Trek would have called impulse power. We're moving a little slowly until we fix everything.
So I want to move into spoiler territory now a little bit. We have, my understanding is 2 pod bays, and in the pilot, we find out that the other one decompressed or was sheared off. I think that may have been the part that was stuck in the revolving section of the ship. That's a fun image to think of. And that had all the command staff. Were there anyone else key that were in that pod, or
all the chief scientists? It's basically like first class versus steerage, and so the whole first class section got sheared off.
Well, notes on travel, interplanetary travel, to anyone watching: don't do that. Kind of distribute your ranks a little bit, just in case something like that happens.
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to explore is human foibles and ego. In that case, it's ego. People, we talk about it in the 4th episode of why it was like that, vaguely a little bit. And it's, it was more, you were more prominent if you got to be in the
right.
officers wing. So people fought to get in it.
One of the things that I hope you guys lean into a little bit more, maybe not, maybe it was just a storytelling component for this one episode, is the software is not the best out there that's running the ship. It's caught the Reed's character. She's like, it's this software is caught in a such and such. It's a common problem because it's older. It's like, oh man, this ship isn't even running on the best technology that Earth has.
That's the case.
Why is that?
These ships were slapped together because there was a rush.
Yeah.
They had to get off the planet, so they're slapped together.
Wow. Okay. And apparently Earth has the technology to send people after them as well if this one target proves to be viable.
Well, no, we know of 16 Arks that were being built when we launched. We don't know how many were being built after that. And we were just the first to go. Each one is targeted at a different exoplanet.
So they're all unique planets.
Yeah, just to see where they can... Well, it's more complicated than that, but basically, the first group is going to different exoplanets, and then the groups following are families and things going to the same, each of the same exoplanets.
Okay.
And that's the plan, but we don't know what happened because we were the first ones to go and we've lost touch. So
Earth has gone dark.
Yeah, well, as far as we know, it has. Yeah.
In the first one, that's scary in and of itself because we see a scene with a family member and this is the last message that they received, and it's been 4 or so years since they communicated with them. So something's up. I love that you're planting the seed that yes, there's a lot of stuff that's happening on board the ship, but I mean the word alien is bantered about in the teaser as well for the rest of the season. Things are going to be happening outside of the ship that are going to put the people on board in their own situation as well for a couple of different directions.
This show is so full of twists and turns. You won't see any of it coming. Hopefully, it's a journey.
Based on the information that we have right now, there's not supposed to be any other human ships following them for the foreseeable future.
Right. Well, maybe in 10 years, their families will be coming.
Okay.
I think we say.
So otherwise, they are out there alone.
Yeah.
All right. Would you potentially continue the show on the planet's surface?
Potentially.
Okay. One of the things that's continually scary is how quickly reality is catching up to science fiction. Or what we have in our minds. And I'm interested to see what kinds of stories you're going to tell that kind of leverage a lot of the modern issues that we're dealing with tech, sociological issues into the show. Can you tease us a little bit about that?
Well, that was sort of 2 issues. The first issue, the science is moving so fast issue, has already bitten us in the butt. And it happens all the time, so we just have to let it slide off our backs. But when we started shooting, as far as people knew, Proxima B was the closest exoplanet. And so that's where we're headed, is Proxima B.
So it's a real world.
Yeah, it's a real planet. And it's 4 light years away, I think. Since then, we've discovered others that are closer. And we've also discovered more about Proxima B that make it less likely to be habitable in real life. So we're just forgetting about it. We can't, what can we do?
You know what? We got better information. Proxima b turns out that it's the best candidate after all.
This is the kind of thing that happens because science is moving so fast. The Webb telescope, every day is finding more exoplanets. Webb wasn't even launched when we started writing this show.
That's true. Well, we've already established in the pilot that we've got characters from a number of different countries. They have different, not just because they're from different countries, but they have different personal objectives as well. How are you guys leveraging the diversity of the cast and the diversity of the audience that's going to be watching them in turn?
We don't get into the diversity of the cast that much in terms of it's not like the Russians are trying to stop the Americans or not doing any of that. We're leaving all that behind. It's more interpersonal things. So really, we don't really leverage the ethnicity or the nationality of anybody at all. That's not part of our story. But there are people, who think they know better and have better ideas. There are people that are scared of things that everyone else is not scared of, and so they want to avoid it. There's constant clashing about what should we be doing, because none of these people are in command really, and none of them are really experts. There's that kind of clashing.
Yeah, I think that one of the draws of the show is going to be that these people are not the ones who are supposed to be the ones in charge, and yet they're going to have to figure out a way to make it happen, otherwise they all die. And they're going to have, what do you do in this situation? You do the best you can. And you see how things shake up.
Yeah, that's exactly what the show's about. Basically, it's people rising to their best selves to survive. Above their best selves, really, because they weren't prepared for this. They were supposed to be trained once they got to the planet to do things on the planet, not to do things on the ship.
One of the things that I expected the show to tackle at some point, but didn't expect it in the pilot, was the people who are on there are people who are on the ship who hacked themselves on.
Yes.
And they, that's a very, with everything that we see today, with systems that are just not as safeguarded as they should be, any digital file can be changed. Anyone can be manipulated into thinking that they're supposed to be on another arc so that someone else can take their place. The human brain is the most hackable thing, and it's happening in real time on this ship. There are forces at work aboard that are doing things solely for their own self-preservation and not at all for the greater good of the group, as evidenced by the murder at the end of episode 1. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Which part of that?
So we've got the stowaway.
He is a smart guy, but he's not smart at life support, which is what he's supposed to be doing. So he hacked his way onto the ship, and it's unfortunate that the person he replaced was the head of life support, and almost killed everybody as a result of it.
Right. But he said, I know people on this ship who have secrets, and I'm guessing that knowledge is what killed him. So there's going to be... There's
lots of secrets. There are lots of people with lots of secrets on this show.
The opportunities for character growth are just ripe here. They're as fertile as that dang soil that got snuck aboard. I'm interested to see what kind of science we're going to see on screen that's going to kind of mirror, what NASA and what a lot of these other companies would like to achieve on other planets here. We're going to see
so whenever we can, we base it on real technology. We can't always do that, but whenever we can, we do. And there's, I'm a science geek. For fun, I read science magazines. So it's a little bit, I do a little bit of banging my own head against the wall because I want to make it real, but I can't because it just would screw up the story too bad. And I want this to be entertaining first and foremost, and scientifically accurate secondarily. So
Is working with Dean still as much fun as it was working on the Outpost?
Yeah, he and I are, in terms of our taste, are the same person. We're both science fiction geeks. We both love the same kind of storytelling. Neither of us can write without having a wink and a nod and a little sense of humor to it. So this show is not the heavy, dark sci-fi that is very popular now. It's sort of the opposite. And I love that stuff. I love watching it, but it's just not what I write. It's meant to be fun and entertaining. It's meant to be, escapism, not
right,
deep, dark,
That's interesting.
Analyzed for years,
Well, I mean, but that doesn't mean that it can't have substance.
Well, of course, it has substance. It has plenty of substance. In the same way that the early Star Treks did, the original and the Next Generation did. There's a lot of metaphor in there. There's a lot of studying of the human condition and how we're our own worst enemy and that kind of thing.
Right.
But it's not, it's just not dark. It's not real deep and dark and, full of almost pseudo-religious meaning underneath it. There's none of that,
Okay. It's you said it. There are different kinds of science fiction because it can flex itself into almost every other genre that exists. But if you're not escaping from the real world into another space, that allows you to appreciate the time that you've been away from your normal world. Mm-hmm. You really have to be in a specific mindset to enjoy it. And with this, you don't have to place yourself there. It looks like you can just turn it on and have a good time and have a good time with your whole family. You don't have to, wait until the younger ones are in bed.
Right. That's the idea. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
One of my favorite science fiction properties, I guess, because it's been a book, a movie, and a series and everything, is Dune. But Dune it's almost like a religious experience. It's so far into what we actually know the setting is that it's like could I write that is what goes through my head. I love watching it, but that's not
intense.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the film? The new one?
I liked it. I wish they had taken the first film and split it into two films. I thought they compressed the first act of it too much. I missed things that I knew were there from the book and
right.
That bugged me.
Yeah, they're in charge. They're in charge of Arakeen for a blink, and then it gets taken over, and Leto's dead, and it's like, wow, it moves even faster than the 2000s miniseries did, and I thought that was saying something.
Yeah, I think they wanted to get to Zendaya as soon as they could.
Exactly. But she's great,
She's great, and they wanted to get, she was, they figured she was box office, so they
exactly.
That's what I think happened, but who knows?
Right. No, it's I'm interested to see the second one for sure.
It certainly was stunning. God, it was a beautiful film.
Tell us about a little bit about your staff writers. But you got Kendall Lampkin, John Paul Nickel, I believe. Who are you looking forward to cultivating as writers? Moving forward into this new space.
There's also Rebecca Rosenberg, who she's the one I guess if I'm cultivating anybody, it's her. She's cultivating herself as far as I'm concerned. But we gave her first writing job on The Outpost, and we were so thrilled with her that we brought her onto this one also. And she's amazing. She's doing great. And JP came from Warehouse 13.
Okay.
He ran it towards the end of the run. And so he's very experienced and he's great. He brings a lot of the humor to the strips. He's a very funny guy.
Okay. This is a pretty well-rounded group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for what you guys have got going. Are we going to get straight 12 episodes? Are there going to be any breaks in the middle? What do you gonna know of Sci-Fi's release strategy?
I don't know what their release strategy is. I hope they're going to air them straight through.
Okay.
But there may be some special event or something stuck in there. I mean, we are going to deliver the episodes in time for them too. We've already delivered them the first 6.
Okay.
So
Are there any cliffhangers?
Oh yeah, there's every one of them ends with a cliffhanger.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this show keeps moving. It moves very quickly.
I think in some respects, modern audiences have come to expect that it's the juxtaposition against the slow moving character piece. Get back to the story. What's going to happen next?
Exactly, and I think with our TikTok days, I think people want things to move a little faster. I think people who are not diehard science fiction fans who read every book that ever comes out, would rather see it move a little faster, I think. And we're hoping to get a broad audience of science fiction fans and not science fiction. I mean, I'll give you an example. This is a horrible thing to say, but it's true. My wife doesn't like any show I work on because she doesn't like science fiction. She's not a sci-fi fan. So she doesn't watch, she's seen maybe 3 Stargates.
She's not interested.
She's not interested.
Okay. That's a shame.
She started seeing me working on this show. I get, because I get cuts and things sent to me that I watch at home, and she got hooked. And she's now our biggest fan. She loves all the characters. She wants to know what we're going to do with them, and
that's great.
So that. Hopefully, that is the pattern here. That the sci-fi guys or women can sit down and watch the show, and their spouse or their significant other who doesn't usually can watch it with them.
Wow. It says something about the accessibility of the product. So
that's what we're going. That's what we're shooting for.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations again, and let's see this thing just get out of the gate running. So it's going to be interesting to watch it. I want to go to the other big Stargate series that you're known for, or big sci-fi series that you're known for, and not the Outer Limits. When you guys were shooting SG-1, you were also shooting Outer Limits.
The first season, yeah.
The first season.
The first season of Stargate, Brad and I were still doing Outer Limits, and then we walked away from Outer Limits after that.
Okay. And I think you indicated the last time that we spoke that each of you kind of divvied up your own episodes and like did not like completely independently of one another, but you were in charge of yours and he was in charge of his, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And eventually Robert Cooper was in charge of his own also.
Okay.
And so the reason for that was not, that show was a huge show because we had 3 sound stages and 2 set construction places and basically a clothing factory working for us all at once because we were going to different planets. And so every week we needed some massive set or some creature or some culture that we had to build wardrobe for 20 extras for or 40 extras for. So it was a big lift. And if we had to be overlooking all of them all at once, it would have killed us. So that's why we divided it up that way. So I could go to this set where they were building this, and we were also usually shooting more than one at a time. So
wow.
One of us could be at one set and the other one could be at the second unit of the other set. It was a big undertaking, that show.
How much extra runway were you given with the fact that you knew that you were going to have 4 seasons and then 5 pretty quickly from the start? How much did that free you up as opposed to other projects where it's like, well, we're going to give you another 6?
Hugely freed us up. It freed us up in multiple ways. It freed us up story-wise because we knew we had time to have the story arcs go slowly and not, just throw them out. It worked in terms of making the show bigger because we could amortize the giant sets over more episodes. So it enabled us to build a much bigger Stargate headquarters. It enabled us to think ahead the way I was just saying. So one of the things that Brad and I did that I'm very proud of because it never happens on most shows is we were always 6 scripts ahead of production.
You say 6?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the reason for that was because the art director had to start drawing the sets for this civilization. The wardrobe people had to start drawing pictures of the wardrobe. Visual effects people, in some cases, had to start figuring out what a ship was going to look like, or a cityscape or something that they were going to have to do in visual effects, because back then the render time could be a month, for a shot. And so we were always ahead, and that enabled us to do it. We couldn't have done that if we didn't know if we had any more episodes coming, So that was very beneficial.
The Richard Hudolin is a genius. I mean, the stuff that he was able to pull off there.
And Bridget, who took over for him later.
Wire.
Yeah, she was his art director when he was the designer, yeah.
Can you tell us anything about the gate itself? Because you guys were missing pieces of that thing, and it was a technological marvel. The fact that in 10 years, as far as I know of, it never missed a glyph. Can you tell us about what you went through to bring that thing to life?
The art department and the mechanical people that we hired on the crew built a new one from scratch. And one of the things that I said to them when we were setting the show up was, this thing has to work every time, because we can't shut down shooting because, oh shoot, they have to fix the gate again. It's got to work every time. And cut to a month later, they say, come in and see, and we went in and they demonstrated it for us, and they had it set up so they could literally dial in what glyph was gonna stop on, and the thing was gonna click clunk, and they were amazing,
Extraordinary piece of machinery, and
and it was a big, heavy sucker. I mean, it took a lot for them to make that thing work.
Were you on set for when they were filming Children of the Gods? Were you on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I remember the first day, the dailies came back, and there was a crack down the middle of the footage. Like the weather was beating you guys up.
It was worse than that. We had to shut down the first day. It was raining so hard, and the wind was so strong that the rain was going horizontally, and it blew over our set. That big prison set that Teal'c saves us from.
Yeah, the Chulak.
The exterior of that was actually built up on the mountain, and it blew over. We had to shut down and go back the next day, which is a really scary thing to do the first day of production on a big series. I'm thinking, God, are we cursed? This has to happen the first day? Come on.
Wow. The location, though, especially with the rocks going out from the Stargate, it's one of the coolest from the entire show. You really got to take advantage of the mountains in the background. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were mountains in many of the episodes. But
yeah, welcome to Vancouver.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What else do you remember with Mario as a party and filming that pilot? I know it takes you back.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot. I remember it's one time. I don't know if I should tell you this story, and I'm not sure I remember it exactly, but it's one time that Richard Dean Anderson, I think, started to trust me even more was because Mario was shooting this shot. You remember the shot where the camera comes up and over and finds him looking out through the telescope?
Yeah, at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. He was shooting it, the way you see it on the show is the camera goes like this, right? But the first way he shot it was like this. And I called cut and said, that's not flattering. First shot of our lead is not going to be looking up his nose. And so he had to reconfigure the shot. And afterwards, Rick said, thanks for that. So that's a story I remember. I think the only reason I remember it is because that's sort of the moment when I knew, okay, Rick and I are going to get along fine.
Your talent's got to know, that the producers have got his back and as well as his nostrils. I mean, come on, this is our lead here.
Yeah,
the opening shot.
Nobody looks good from here. I don't care how good looking you are.
That's great. Do you?
Don had told me that there were certain people that were suggesting kind of a limitation of his performance. This is the general. This is what he does. And he was like, I was in the Army. This doesn't feel right. And as the show progressed, he was able to loosen the guy up a little bit, and become the teddy bear that we all came to love.
What he really became more of was himself.
Right.
He was the sweetest guy. He was just a great guy.
The entrance of Apophis at the top of this episode, Peter Williams, carried so much of that episode. If you did not believe him as the villain, if you did not believe that he was legitimate, if you're like, oh my God, this guy is hamming it up, I can't watch this. He was so authentic in taking the best of what Jay Davidson had in the movie and adapting that species into his own. He was Apophis, putting on airs and everything. You believe that guy commanded that room.
We had Peter play 2 different parts in The Outer Limits prior to this. So we knew him well and we knew what he could do. And so the part was practically written for him. We all along we knew it was probably going to be him. So it worked out well that way because he was. When you interview Dean, ask him about Jay. He's got good stories that I'm not at liberty to tell you, but see if he'll tell you.
Absolutely. No, we had, and we also had Dr. Stuart Tyson Smith on, the Egyptologist from the film as well. There was a discovery process for sure. So absolutely. In the pilot, there is a controversial scene that has continued to come up because it's always interfering every time the show gets published in a new area. There is a scene of nudity in the pilot. And we had Vaitiari Hirschon on to discuss that.
Recently?
In the past year.
How is she?
She's wonderful.
I haven't heard a word about her. And
what a beautiful human inside and out. I'll send you the link for the show.
Okay.
But one of the things that she was surprised at, she was she understood that she was going to be shot from the chest up, but she was surprised when she found out that she was completely visible. And she said that she actually had to go in and sign an updated contract at the end for that shot to even be released.
Oh, you see, I didn't know any of that in terms of the contract because I was not privy to any of that. Wow. The business affairs people do the contracts, and they're here in LA. But what I do know is that I will always regret that we did any nudity in the show. We did it for Showtime.
Yeah, they demanded it. Yes.
Well, they didn't say you have to do nudity here.
Right. What did they insist in the pilot?
But what they did say was this show has to be something that you can only see on cable. It can't be a show that you would see on ABC or CBS or NBC because all they cared about was getting subscribers. And in today's mindset, things you can only see on cable are things that are controversial or dark, or The Sopranos started that path. But back then, it was cussing, nudity, and extra and graphic violence. Those are things they couldn't show on the networks, and so that's what you did on cable. And so they said you've got to put some of that stuff in. And personally, I would rather have nudity than graphic violence. I think a naked body is much less offensive than seeing somebody's head get blown off. So that's what we did. And when we were watching the cut, we asked if we could take it out, and they said they'd rather we not take it out. And so we left it in, but then it came out in the syndicated version. We took it out, obviously, but had to. And Brad then later took it out of the DVD version after I was gone. But when it came on in the pilot, we were like, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. And we just refused to do any more in the show. So we just wouldn't do it. And they never explicitly said do nudity. They said, but the reason they canceled the show when they canceled it was because it was something you could just see on network TV.
Oh, that's why it stopped at 5 years.
it sucked at 3 years, didn't it? On was it 5 years on
5 years on Showtime?
Yeah, that's why.
Okay. Wow. I can understand where they're coming from. If you're going to get this anywhere else, then why have it here? At the same time, if it's successful, if it's doing great, to the point where it gets picked up another 5 years, why again? Why fix something that isn't broken?
Here was the problem with that: is the deal that MGM made for the show, for financial reasons to make it producible, because it was a very expensive show.
Yeah,
was it went into syndication only like 3 weeks or something. I don't remember what the exact time was after it aired on Showtime. So if you just waited 3 weeks, you could see it for free. So Showtime needed their version to have something in it that made it so you'd watch it on Showtime and not in syndication. So that was the added problem. And I can't knock MGM for doing that, because that's what made it possible for us to make the show. But that's what generated that problem.
That's certainly true. I found the show in its first run syndication, and it was 13 or 14 months after the original had aired. And in the scheme of things, when Showtime is doing its rerun blocks, a few months later, that's not a lot of reruns to really pull that off.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Were you in the States?
I was.
I thought it was less time than that.
It was. It was. So this was September of 1998 that I first saw the show.
I wonder if you were seeing
September.
I wonder if you were seeing the rerun of the rerun in syndication.
It's possible. I always thought that I saw it the first night that it aired. Saturday night, like 10 o'clock, and I was expecting Outer Limits or Poltergeist: The Legacy. Instead, I got this really expensive ring, and like, well, something's happening here. And so I watched the first part, and it kept on going. It's like, well, I got to go to church next morning, so I'm going to take the rest. And so I did, and I was hooked. I was hooked after that. And then that Sunday night, that was the ABC affiliate. That Sunday night on NBC, Stargate was the movie of the week.
Huh.
What are the odds?
Oh, I'm sure that was intentional. I'm sure MGM put it on that way to promote the show.
Good for MGM, because I got hooked after that. So absolutely. The pilot just all around, you have great cast. You have For This, You Can Stay at My Place. You've got the humor, and everything is fully working there. And you have promise for much more at the end of that episode. The Broca Divide. This was one of your episodes, and this was Stargate feeling itself out with the characters, taking advantage of a historical concept, the Broca Divide, and adapting it for this show. What are your thoughts looking back on that particular episode? I know we're reaching again for something very specific, esoteric.
The one thing I remember is the difficulty we had with the prosthetics on the people when they became
Cro-Magnons.
Yeah, for lack of a better word, brokified. And I was never completely satisfied with it. I thought it looked a little hokey, but it was hard to do because we had to do it to a lot of people. If we were just doing it to one person, it would have been spectacular. But we had to find a way to do it to a bunch of people and on a TV schedule. So I remember that being problematic. I don't remember much else about it.
My understanding was Rick stopped production
for
to have his headpiece redone.
Oh, that could be. It was a constant nightmare. They kept pulling off and leaving seams, and it was a mess.
You guys are figuring yourselves out.
No, it wasn't just that. It was, we never did that much prosthetic again after that. We would do a prosthetic on one person or two people, but we would never have an entire race of people with it, in the show where we had to have all the extras in it and so on, because we learned our lesson.
There's some standout performances in that episode. I think Teal'c really grows in that show because he's on his own and he's a fish out of water, still pretty much at this point, still figuring out how the Air Force works and how the team has to do what it does. Christopher was really beginning to shine in some of these stories when he wasn't just the statue in the background being, look mean and take points. He had that he had that presence to him, but the guy could act.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one of the reasons we did that episode, if I remember correctly, was to give him some heroic time, some time to do more than just, as you say, be the statue in the background. Everybody else had their shot at it, and we were having a hard time finding excuses for him to do it by himself since he was not yet fully trusted, by the military. And so that was, if I remember correctly, that was the episode. That's why we wrote that one, was to find a way to make it so that he could be the one saving the day.
I think some of Christopher's episodes and moments are some of the strongest in that first season. We recently did a rewatch of Cor-Ai on Wormhole Extremists. And in terms of television trials, damn, that's good. Especially the scene between him and Rick. And they are arguing over, who does the buck stop with? And it's the Nuremberg question. Mm-hmm. Who does the buck truly stop with? And you've got two people.
Well, that's what science fiction does best. That was one of those episodes where I was like, yeah, that's what we should be doing more of. And we had fun. I just remember having a lot of fun in the writer's room on that one, saying, well, what can his argument be here? What's the other side of this? And we got to play lawyer for a little while.
It's delicious to watch them because you can see on Jack's face that he believes, he doesn't think that, he's as guilty as Teal'c because he wasn't under such a malicious regime, but he knows in other ways he's just as guilty as Teal'c is with taking lives. And so as Teal'c is willing to let himself be hung for this, Jack isn't. Jack's like, we had a job to do and we did it. And now I'm your CEO and I'm telling you to keep your mouth shut so that I can try and get you out of this. It's an extraordinary hour of TV.
Well, thank you. No, that was one of my favorites too.
One of my favorite guests.
What's funny though is we were at SYFY, the science fiction convention in New Orleans promoting the Ark, and somebody asked me what was your favorite Stargate episode, and I was trying to think of that one, and I was trying to think of the Tok'ra, and I could not remember the name Cor-Ai, and so I started describing the episode, and it was embarrassing, but that was a long time ago.
It's a good show. People are still eating it up in droves. One of my favorite guest appearances in that first episode is Suanne Braun as Hathor. You co-wrote with I believe David Bennett Karen and J. Larry Carroll. We bring this Egyptian figure to life in this show, and she did that with a tremendous amount of poise. She still recalls very fondly that experience on the show. Can you tell us about casting Suanne?
I just remember seeing her audition and thinking she was great. There's not a whole lot of story to it. That was about it. I will tell you that episode was originally designed to be one that had nudity in it.
Oh yes, I saw the illustrations.
And we very quickly, that's how far ahead we were on the scripts, right?
Right.
And we said, no, we're not doing it. And so we went to the wardrobe people and said, can you just make her sexy, but not showing anything? And that's what they did. And they came up with that wonderful outfit she wears most of the show.
Absolutely. And that was like real metal. She said that thing hurts. It's around that. Sometimes you think that things are a certain way for television. Other things, they are exactly as they appear or even perhaps more comfortable. But she looks great as a result. And, even she says, it was worth it. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the departments that don't get enough credit on the show was the wardrobe department. The amount of wardrobe they had to manufacture, and they, most shows you can just go out and buy wardrobe, right? They had to make everything for these cultures. The military uniforms, obviously, and the Earth clothes they could buy, but they had to make that from scratch. They had to design it and make it.
You really had to. Christina McQuarrie was just brilliant.
Yeah.
you really had to find people who were willing to work those long hours in the trenches for not one typical show, but in some respects, like 2 or 3 of that quantity. Because I remember Richard Dudolan saying, every week we make worlds. That's a huge undertaking. Not everyone can just pull that off.
It was kind of amazing what they pulled off, and we'd go on the stage one day, and they'd be stripping a set out, and 4 days later, there's this massive set that normally would be like the standing set for a series, that would be for the whole series, and this was just for one episode.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy.
When you and Brad were drafting the first season and bringing it to life, was it your intent from pretty early on that Apophis was going to pay us a visit by the end, that Earth was going to come under direct attack? The promise of what the film really set out to suggest with a larger enemy threat out in the wild was going to come true, that Earth was going to be paid a visit?
We always had the idea that once we let the Gold know we're here, and that we killed Ra, that they're going to want to come pay us a visit. And that's how it manifested itself ultimately. But that's where we started with saying, when Brad and I were first starting working out the show, and we were looking at the movie and trying to stay as true to it as we could, we said, well, they killed Ra, but then what? What do Ra's people, whoever they are, going to do about it? And that's kind of what launched us into Apophis and having him come back. And
you get a great closure of this season. When you stand back and you look at it, it really is a 4-parter, because you have There Before the Grace of God, you have politics, you have Within the Serpent's Grasp, and then you have The Serpent's Lair. Man, am I a geek for just knowing that. But
you really amazed me.
I'm flirting with Sam. I'm so sorry. The other part of me is like, no, this works. There Before the Grace of God, I love it because we see everything go to hell. And the hairs are standing up on the back of my neck just thinking about it, with Michael Shanks' line, "They're coming," when he comes back over, because we see just how bad it can get. Because we know in the show, we're not, the heroes are ultimately going to save the day with a certain amount of sacrifice. But in this case, you guys decided to show it all. And that was a great stroke. Whoever came up with that idea is like, let's go to a place where we can tell a really dark story with our characters and let them experience this.
I don't know. Brad probably said this to you, but we prided ourselves on the outer limits of destroying the Earth at least once every 4th episode or so.
Oh, yeah.
And so, that's what makes it the most heightened, is if you can take it right up to the edge of disaster and come through. I directed those episodes, and the last image of the Earth, when they come up over in the space shuttle's coming up over the horizon, that's what made the hairs on the back of my neck, which was by design. But
these shuttles, they are formidable craft. Oh yeah. What a shot. Absolutely. You brought back, you wrote Within the Serpent's Grasp with James Crocker, and you directed, like you said, Serpent's Lair. One of the things that Brad mentioned in the DVD was that it's suggested that Skaara and Klorel die, but in the editing room, you guys changed that around so that he escapes with Apophis. You use a previous shot of Skaara and Klorel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, this was a time when the internet was really just starting up, and there were all these, they called them bulletin boards, BBSs back then, which is basically sort of like Twitter, I guess, but they were what's more like Reddit. They were topical bulletin boards, and so there were Stargate fan bulletin boards, and people were posting. And when they saw the end of the first season that we had killed Skaara, they went ballistic. The fans just hated that we had killed him, and so we responded. And we had already shot the second one, the Serpent's Lair, which is the second one.
Serpent's Lair.
Yeah.
Is the second one.
And so we went to the visual effects teams and we said, can we beam him up with Apophis? And they cut him out of a shot and put him in that shot, and it satisfied the audience that at least he was alive.
It was worth it, and it's one of those cool stories where it's like it's the fans were being listened to, even back in season 2. That's cool.
Today it's harder you can't really do that today because there are so many sites and so many fans and so many voices, and it's just overwhelming. Your head will explode if you try to read all of it. But back then, there were probably 2 bulletin boards dedicated to Stargate, and that was it, So you could go actually read them, which we did. And also back then, people weren't as mean as they are now.
True.
Because you had to use your real name. You couldn't use... So people were a little more polite.
It wasn't always about the next jab. But no, I mean, I will say this for the Stargate crowd largely. It is compared to for instance, the Star Wars crowd, it is largely very well behaved. And I think largely because it skews older. If you look at the demographic data for a lot of this, it's 30s and 40s, and you're presenting an intellectual product, which lends itself to intellectual discussion. So I will say that.
Which is fine. I mean, that's true. I think that's true of most science fiction. But then there's still, the people who get angry and somehow manage to bring today's politics into it. And
of course,
this is too woke, or this is not woke enough, or
right. Oh God. Season 2. I want to get to the Tok'ra and then cut off because that's obviously a big one. But before that, we have the Gamekeeper, which you co-wrote with Brad Wright. This is one of my favorite episodes of the show. You have for one thing, you use the top of Vancouver, Bloedel Conservatory for the exterior and interiors, but also you had an incredible guest performance by Dwight Schultz, and we have a great peek into some of Jack's history, which was rare. We never met his parents in the entire show, but we saw what he was doing in East Germany and what he had to do in the Cold War. And we saw the death of Daniel's parents. And so it was a great sci-fi idea. And it allowed us to explore the characters a little bit more as well. What do you remember about the Gamekeeper?
I know that Brad and I came up with it on a plane. We're sitting on a plane being flown to LA for a meeting or back to Vancouver from a meeting, one or the other, with the studio. And we were just batting around ideas and came up with it on that flight. And then we went and wrote it. I think we were in a hurry on that one. I think this was one of the times where we needed that 6th script because we were behind. And I remember being very excited that we got Dwight Schultz because I had grown up watching the A-Team.
Right.
And thought that he was so funny on the A-Team and he can do all those characters, and he's perfect for the part. When I heard we got him, I was thrilled. And he was great for the part. I mean, he's such a character.
He is. And under that hat, I mean, like whatever this it's he played that really well. And it's funny, you've got everything's gloomy outside. He's got the residents trapped in their virtual reality because he doesn't want them to ruin the garden. And it's just hysterical to watch. It's like, you gotta let the inmates out of the prison. The crisis is over. You can't keep cultivating the garden just for your own little, so you can be king of your particular hill. You got to let these people out. It's a great little story. I love that show, and it gives us a look at Michael acted his pants off, and so did Rick. We get insights into both of their pasts.
That was another show where we really had a great cast. There wasn't a weak link in that cast.
We have this idea with In the Line of Duty that our worst fear comes true. What happened to Kowalski happens to one of our core team members. And it's a great moment. You've got the gliders blowing up the beach, and Sam gives mouth to mouth to one of the Nassians who have fallen, and Jolinar takes her over. And we don't know about the Tok'ra at this point. We have no idea who they are. And we're like, well, we did this with Kowalski and it didn't work. How are we going to get Sam back? You're introducing the idea of the Tok'ra, and Teal'c is aware of them a little bit, but I love that episode because, it was great growth for Sam, and it leads into the Tok'ra run 1 and 2. Tell us about developing that offshoot of the race, the anti-Goa'uld.
There was a point where I said, I'm getting sick of these Goa'uld all being evil, 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 bad, 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 and I don't believe there's any culture or race in the world except maybe the Klingons that are every single one of them are bad. There's got to be some resistance to that within their own people. And that got my mind going, and I started thinking, well, what if there are rebels within them that could actually help us? It would give them more dimensions, the Goa'uld themselves more dimensions, and it would help us expand upon their culture and learn a little more about their culture, and it would give us a lot of story, which it ultimately did give us a lot of story. And then when we got to the Tok'ra, I thought about what is the most touching way we can do that, and that's when we came up with Dad has cancer, and the one way to heal him is to put a Goa'uld in him. And thank God for Carmen. He was, because that part could have been really bad because he had to play 2 characters in the same body, and without a really good actor doing it,
and with cancer,
without a really good actor doing it, it could have been funny in the wrong way, And Carmen just nailed it. I wanted to give him a big hug.
He came back for so many shows. His death, that was a hard one to swallow because everyone knew him in the Stargate fan base as Dad. Dad has passed away, and it was just that was his character, and he loved that part. He adored it, and he adored Amanda and the rest of the cast. You guys really had a gem there. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was such a sweet guy and talented. I wanted to cast him in every show I ever did, but I never was able to.
He was busy.
Yeah, he was busy, and I never had a part that was really.
Yeah, that it's an example of one of those great setups. You've got all the runway to put together an interesting story like that because he's introduced in Secrets and his illness, which is another terrific episode in itself. You've got multiple layers going on with Abydos and with Earth and the political intrigues. The Earth side stuff is starting to come out. Other people know about this thing. Kenzie's talking to somebody. But you really leveraged that with Carmen and with Jacob and Selmak. You have a great, if something's going on, we need a little bit more help. We dial in Jacob. We need this thing to see these bugs. Maybe we should check in the Tok'ra. Maybe they've got something going on there. Mm-hmm. They were a great lever of an ally that we could go to. Not like they could fix everything for us, but it's like, okay, let's add some moving parts to this.
Yeah, it was somebody to go to. Them in the Asgard became very much that.
This has been great, Jonathan, and I really appreciate you taking the time to go to one of your old shows and discuss through it a little bit more while we're eagerly anticipating the next one. And I think that I think that watching the pilot, I think you've got a tiger by the tail here.
Well, thank you.
This is going to be
wait till you see the rest of it. It gets better and better.
I can't wait. I am Parker wants to go back to him and say, "Hey, give me the other 3. This isn't fair." What, my chopped liver?
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't. I think you might have asked for it before they had the other 3.
Okay.
They gave the other 3 to everybody right before TCAs.
I see.
So they wouldn't get out.
Okay. Well, I can't recommend the show enough to audiences. If you're watching this, it means you like Stargate. And if you like Stargate, this is going to be in your neck of the woods for sure. And give the characters a chance and give the setting a chance because you guys get off cooking with gas and it doesn't let up. So I'm thrilled for you guys, really.
Thanks.
My thanks once again to Jonathan Glassner, Stargate SG-1's executive producer and co-creator, for helping to make this episode possible. If you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, if you haven't clicked like yet, please do so. I would really appreciate it. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. And if you want to support the show further, get yourself a t-shirt or a tank top, sweatshirt, hoodie, something, cup. Variety of sizes and colors at dialthegate.com. Just click on the merchandise tab, or you can type in your web browser, dialthegate.com/merch. Checkout is fast and easy. You can use a credit card or PayPal, and thank you so much for your support. Things are cooking with gas with the show. We've got a number of special guests lined up. This is current as of a few days ago, so by the time this airs, this may be adjusted a little bit, but I doubt it. If anything, we'll have more people added. I'm in talks right now. James Tishner, visual effects producer and writer of a couple of episodes of Stargate SG-1, is joining us February the 11th at 12 noon Pacific time. And then later that afternoon, evening, Anna Galvin, multiple roles from SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. She was Chloe's mom. She was the Sakari consciousness. And she was the murdered lady in Mitchell's episode. Brains don't fail me now. Collateral Damage. That's it. All right. Anna Galvin's going to be joining us February the 11th at 4 p.m. It's one of our later shows. I really hope you can make it. John Delancey, Q himself, and Colonel Frank Simmons is going to be joining us midweek episode Wednesday, February the 15th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. I know we're a weekend show, but you know what? I mean, some of these guests, there's no other way to do it, and if they say yes, so do we. So we're going to have John Delancey joining us February the 15th. And then Linnea herself is returning. Bonnie Bartlett. She is promoting her new book, Middle of the Rainbow, How a Wife, Mother, and Daughter Managed to Find Herself and Win 2 Emmys. So if you go to dialthegate.com, you can click on that, or just go to Amazon and type in Middle of the Rainbow as well. And that information is all there. Wormhole Extremists is continuing. I'm not going to go through Wormhole Extremists, except to say that on February 15th, we are doing a sci-fi movie, Alien, in the middle of the week. So it's our little reward for getting either halfway or a full way through a season. I didn't want to do one until we had a full season one, a full season of Stargate episodes under our belt with our core team, so we're going to do that now. My thanks, tremendous thanks to my moderating team, Summer, Tracy, Jeremy, Reese, and Anthony. You guys make the show possible behind the scenes. My producer, Linda Gate Gabber Fury. She's also sending out a lot of emails and making some calls to make guests possible. And Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web, our web developer over at Dial the Gate. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. I appreciate it so much. That watching the channel continue to grow just means everything to me. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and we'll see you on the other side.